Greetings, citizens. It is Monthly Review Mondays. This isn't the official pilot. This is just going to be technical pilot, so to speak. Because Sis and Kathy has not finished reading yet. So, can't exactly do Monthly Review Mondays yet, but I wanted to put something out there. A bit of housekeeping before I begin looking at the article. I have the fan on only because the television is coming through on the mic, and so I think the fan is a much more pleasant droning noise than the random crashings and the wiry sound of the... So, Monthly Review Mondays, what is the plan? How is this going to look? Well, citizens, as you have heard, Sis and Kathy will be joining me, hopefully for every single Monthly Review Monday that we ever have. So it's going to be a bit like a podcast, I think. Perhaps down the road it will be a good recruitment tool. That has always been a problem, as you citizens know as well as I. It's going to look like a podcast, the official episodes when Sis and Kathy reads. And that will be posted hopefully next Monday. That's all the housekeeping there is to do at the moment. Citizens, if you're interested in doing this and joining, leave a comment down below or message on Discord. Doesn't really matter which one you do. But you will have to have a subscription to the Monthly Review, of course. It's going to be very difficult to do this if you don't. Or maybe if you... I think Monthly Review has, like, the first... the issue of the month free for that month. So you might be able to get away with, reading for free. But it's probably best if you do have a subscription to the Monthly Review. I think that's all that I have for that. Why is my face covered in darkness? Citizens, I'm a Major League Gaming Let's Player. That's just fake news.
By NBC.
Right, this isn't going well. I'm going to have to do so much editing now. Okay, Major League Gaming Let's Player. We are discussing, Sis and Kathy and I, next Monday, but also now, the April 2024 issue of Monthly Review, Misery of Left Nietzscheism, or Philosophy as Irrationalist Ideology, by Matthew Sharp, which is a review of a book by a Frenchman, Monville. On the first page, that is page 13 of this issue, on the top, if there were no fire, about Nietzsche's fascist reception. Sharp thinks that Nietzsche himself was a proto-fascist is a question I'm posing here, according to my notes. Perhaps that's not a fair question in retrospect, but I think it's strongly implied by Sharp's review, or at least by Monville's perspective. It's hard to differentiate at times. What are Sharp's opinions as opposed to his review of the opinions of Monville? I think it's implied that they are very anti-Nietzsche at the very least, if not actually considering him a proto or just an outright fascist. I've not read much Nietzsche, so I'm recalcitrant to say anything on the matter. Obviously, I think Hegel has been much more useful to fascism and to hindering the left, as opposed to someone like Nietzsche, who my critiques of this are, who are these Nietzscheans that are readily visible and apparent? I don't know who they are. I've never met anyone that says, I'm a Nietzschean. I've never even heard anyone mention Nietzsche before. So, I don't know who these left Nietzscheans or right Nietzscheans, these Nietzschean fascists are, to begin with. Very odd concerning they're, all over the place according to Sharp and Monville. Right, Petersonism, a descendant of Foucault, ? Yeah, it mentions the Foucauldians here on the middle bottom or bottom. Foucauldians with the followers of Jordan Peterson. Cultural Nietzscheism, unites these two things. So says Monville, or Sharp and or Monville. So, again, having read Nietzsche extensively and knowing even less about Foucault, except that he's had something to do with the CIA, or had the CIA something to do with him, doesn't give me very much a right to speak on it. Insert Wittgenstein quote about whereof cannot speak, you know, the one says, and I'm sure one of you knows. That is something I don't understand. What is the connection there? That was a recurring question I'm now finding in my mental processes. I was asking of Sharp's article. Is this true, and how is this connected? Which is not good for an article. One should think in a well-constructed article those questions are either answered or don't even pop up to begin with. So, moving on at a steady pace. Right, page 14 of the issue, top. Well, of course, the French... Oh, that's funny. Okay. The French are better at political theory is basically what this note says, contrasted to the Deutsche Excellence in philosophy. The note is funny that I wrote. He says, Sharp and or Monville, that Camus, Deloitze, and Foucault rehabilitated and celebrated Nietzsche. So, 14, middle. Left Nietzscheism opposes socialist left, the old socialist left, to be specific, is what Sharp and or Monville, I'm just going to continue saying Sharp from now on, says that left Nietzscheism, or Nietzscheism Madagali, or something, the Nietzscheism of the Gauche, is opposed to the old left, and mentions the 60s, 70s left libertarian turn. Again, don't know, but I'm also suspicious of this claim. I'm also suspicious that, because I don't know who these left Nietzscheans are. That's the problem here. It would have helped to know, unless Camus, Deloitze, Foucault are examples, in which case there's a question of how much influence these persons have wielded. Indeed, I've never heard anyone, I think, in fact, even mention Nietzsche. It's usually only me who cares enough about this person, this Nietzsche fellow. Who is he? Is he a fascist? Moving on. I just like more evidence of who this is and how it's so influential. Left Nietzscheans dismiss and do not read Lukács. So, and I have a note in parentheses here, just like Hegelians according to Coletti. Right, so, according to Coletti, Hegelians don't read Lukács, and according to Sharp and Monville, left Nietzscheans don't read Lukács. So Lukács is getting screwed on two fronts here. I do not know if this is the case, but it is true that I've never heard Lukács mentioned before. Even citizens, all of us within the club really haven't. Maybe Citizen S, but besides that, I don't know who else has. 14b, there's no road of exclusively determined historical progress, and scientism is not culture, right? So that's a little criticism I have. 14, bottom of the page. Destroying credibility, that is, you know, the Nietzscheans are destroying the credibility of any ideas of historical progress founded on reason and scientific culture. I think the club has discussed why historicism and historical determinism of all stripes, and determinism generally, is a problem, is not persuasive. Scientism, of course, Eliot, Deneen, so on. Science is not a culture, and culture cannot be scientifically made. It has to be organic, as Eliot goes over and notes towards the definition of culture, as you citizens will recall. moving on. So, 15 top. Right. He has a list of bullet points that is Matthew, and I think in this case, indeed, Monville. And now I can't find the article. Okay. Right. Depreciation of understanding and reason. Differentialism and ethnicist interpretations. Abandonment of knowledge and real relations. Dandyism and pseudo-aristocratism, and a reduction of knowledge to technical utility. Those are 5 bullet points that he lists as being important to the Nietzschean project. Presumably both right and left. Okay. And I have had things to say, of course. So, intuition is superior to scientism. That's the first thing I wrote. And I'm sure when Citizen Kathy and I actually do the first official episode, we'll go into detail in that and have a better discussion. Reminder that this is not the official launch. So please, do not hold the series, Monthly Review Mondays, accountable by the measure of this. This is just a technical pilot. I'll put in the title probably 0.5 or something like that. Please don't hold this episode against the actual podcast, which will, with Sis and Kathy, will be much more engaging and entertaining, probably. Probably. Okay. So for systematic thought, this is a place where material science is most useful, but applied to matters of the mind, catastrophe ensues. So-called systematic philosophy is at best presuppositionally biased in shaping the reality of fact to affirm its abstract conjectures, and at worst leads to a cult-like dogma, which is difficult or outright impossible to disprove. This gets into some of the debates we've had, indeed recently in Club, about scientism and other questions of epistemology. I'm not convinced about the scientistic and the deterministic, ultimately, arguments. I don't find them convincing, as I've told Citizen B and so on. I'm just not convinced by them. They don't seem to be... They seem to just be dogma. And, yeah, so... That's my critique of bullet point 1. Bullet point 3, myth is the origin of wisdom, and need not contradict or be emphasized above fact. Absence of myth is merely a stagnated stagnation. This again goes into, but this is also, yeah, so I've been having a discussion about this as of late with a fellow citizen, and I'm not convinced that scientism can provide everything organizationally speaking, or not even organizationally speaking, just prerequisitely speaking for the creation of wisdom and of organization, of structure. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that Bacon is the answer. And I do not believe that Bacon can be separated from scientism. That Bacon's methods can be separated from Bacon's system, so to in a manner of speaking. And this was, something we talked about in our discussions of why liberalism failed. Is Bacon separable from his system? His methods from his system? I say no. Citizen B says yes. So, yeah, I think there's more to discuss there. I'm sure Citizen Kathy and I will discuss it come this Monday. Moving on. So 4. Dandyism and Aristostic are immensely beneficial when appropriately channeled through tradition, culture, custom, and ideology. I think I've spoken about this in past club discussions. I believe dandyism and Aristostic is something that is decisively missing from today's, I wouldn't even say left, but from today's political image. Is that the right word? Political being, purposes, foundation, something like that. The dandyist Aristostic, that is, the practice of aristocratism, is missing, and Citizen S has discussed this in previous club meetings, that we've lost the capacity for original thought, in a sense, from this I would say this pervasion of middle class degeneratisms, and the whole identity sweep, of course, that there is a push of these various things, and it's not easy to speak about, of course. I think we would all agree with that, considering we've all of us have discussed it at length, and there are still things that I'm sure are not clear. Okay, moving on. Apologies, citizens. Okay. The 1968 rebellions malformed the aforementioned positive principles, indeed. Right, I think Sharp mentions the 1968 rebellions in passing and not in an entirely positive light. So, indeed, I would agree. Actually, let me make sure that's the case before I say anything. Okay, right. The famous 68 rebellions, a period of abundance, but which is now reeling even further into systemic crises that are giving birth at an ever-accelerating pace to new forms of authoritarianism or fascism. Right, and he says that's a form of capitalism. Right, okay. It emerged in 1967. Right, yeah, so that is a thing that Sharp Monville posits. I agree. The 1968 rebellions, studentism itself is a horrible monstrosity and catastrophe of an ideology and should never, if it can be helped, be resorted to. I learned my lesson firsthand. The studentry don't care. They do not care about anything. They don't have the experience to actually win an organizational victory, as opposed to a what we might call a singular or single event victory. Yeah. So continuing forwards. Right. Advocating. I don't want Susan to strike at me for this note. So there's something Nietzsche apparently says about a certain ethnicity's females and them possessing genetic traits that are desirable. And I would just say that we have to have a care when dealing with persons from this time period, from, pre-scientific genetic understanding, to put it vaguely, because I'm not learned enough to actually speak on this matter with any depth or certainty. But I think you could say that most persons do not have a good grasp of genetic science, and so all I'm saying is that, yes, what Nietzsche said here is quite stupid, quite silly, and horrendous by today's standards. But can we blame this as a personal... Not personal, that's not what I'm trying to say. Can we extricate this as uniquely horrendous to Nietzsche as opposed to just a horrendous element of the time period, of the era, what have you? That's my only concern. And I'm not going to say anything in relation to this specific note because I don't particularly want this channel to have the iron fist of repression coming down on it. Not yet, at least. We have to get a little bit bigger. We have to at least have 5 subscribers before that happens, or else this has been a horrible failure of a channel. And an even more atrocious series and podcast. Okay, moving on. Was Walter Kaufmann not the first Nietzsche apologist to reject this in the Anglosphere, at least? And he does mention Kaufmann, so so he does. I wrote this note before I got to the Kaufmann part where he mentions him because it's a little bit farther down the paragraph. Continuing. We ought to ask the same thing about Hegel. What? Future citizen Niklas Wilhelm, you have to actually, say more than that. I can't do a podcast based on something so vague. Okay, 16 middle. Let's see. Oh, is it the Mussolinian fascist chieftains and intellectuals? Is that what I'm talking about here? And the Gauchist new left counterculture. Yeah, I think that's what I'm speaking about. Yes, I am not a fan of Hegel. As citizens know. Nothing to say here. I just don't see how Nietzsche, you could say, has done more damage to the left than Hegel. I think it's the opposite. I don't know anyone who adopts Nietzsche as important to their political canon, political ideology, what have you. Whatever you will. So, yeah. Okay, moving on. Common defenses of Nietzsche he goes into, that is Sharp and Monville. Derrida's universal defense obscurantist, yes, right, so that's, he says that Derrida's thing is not a common sense reading, and that, that exegesis is useless. That's basically the summary, because Derrida's weird, wacky, at least I think it was Derrida. I hope it was Derrida that he said this in relation to, had a weird, it's the experience of Nietzsche that informs us, or something like that. Okay. Right, so, oh no, that was Foucault's postmodern tool defense, I think. That we don't need to actually... No, Foucault's was we can use... And it was Derrida that was the experience thing. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. Okay. Kaufmann's standalone experience defense. Maybe I just mashed all of these together in my mind. When Citizen Kathy and I do the first official episode of this podcast, I'm sure I will have reread it by then and will understand what I'm talking about here. Apologies, citizens, this was a bit last minute, just so we had something to put out. Okay, so, Blanchot and Bataille, esoteric, gnostic defense, very interesting and poetic. Right, so they had a very high level defense of how we gain something of value from Nietzsche, and it was very gnostic in its experiential secret knowledge, and it was interesting. But I'll discuss that more. No, I shouldn't take shortcuts here, citizens. That's not why you waited so damn long. Uh-oh. I hope that doesn't negatively affect the channel. Whoops. Isn't, like, cursing now verboten? Or at least semi-verboten? Please, Google gods, have mercy on me. Okay, so... Or I could just edit it out, and they'd be none the wiser. You may not even know what I'm speaking about right now, because I edited out. Okay, so, right, about the Blanchot and Bataille defense, page 17, where am I going? Okay, so... You know what? Never mind. We will do that later. Apologies, citizens. I can't find it. I'm under a bit too much pressure. I need to keep going. Lukács and Lacerdo perilous for left Nietzscheism. Right, so he says that Lukács and Lacerdo are perilous for left Nietzscheism. Yeah, so apparently Lukács is also perilous for Hegelian idiocy, according to Coletti. So it seems Lukács is a dangerous gentleman all around. He's beating Nietzsche, he's beating Hegel. It's very interesting to see this characterization of Lukács as, you know, some omni-tool of beating other philosophers. Very interesting. Okay. And Lacerdo's Western Marxism I've not yet read. I saw that came out. But busy. I've also not read Lacerdo's Stalin History of a Black Legend. So I have not read... I do have his Liberalism and Counter History. I've yet to read that, though, either. So I have, you know... I'm not very well versed in Lacerdo, suffice to say. Okay. So Nietzsche's sister, defense against Hitler and fascism, the fascist accusations that they twisted Nietzsche's works, predominantly his sister. Sharp and Monville say it is the opposite, that Nietzsche's sister, in fact, toned down his abhorrent, fascistic, Nazi writings. Saying the N-word's also verboten. At least I'm pretty sure. Whoops. Okay, moving on. If this gets... This is not going well. There's too many rules to remember. And I'm not a professional, so... Uploader, that is YouTuber. What's even the name for doing this? Okay, so... That was interesting, because of course I had always heard the Kaufmann defense that Nietzsche's sister was the actual N-wort. So it's very interesting to hear that no, she was actually not as abhorrent and controversial as Nietzsche himself was, let us say, to avoid censorship. So yeah, that was interesting. But again, I'm not certain that is even true. So, we have that problem that's continuing to pop up. Moving on. Deloitza and Foucault believe Nietzsche's sister did not falsify, and Lasordo that she even softened Nietzsche's vitriol. Right, we just covered that. So Monville misunderstands was actually the violence of the mind, an aristocratic mode of struggle completely justified. That's to page 19, middle bottom. So yeah, he does mention that. I think he says that left Nietzscheans are like romanticizing or aestheticizing violence or something like that. I find that hard to believe. I personally find that hard to believe. I think anti-Nietzscheans also do that today, so I'm not convinced that that's happening on a large enough scale to call it a phenomenon, in the proper, a notable phenomenon, let's say. And two, I do not believe that it is specifically this group of, this tradition of Nietzscheans that are doing it. Nietzscheans? I don't know. Doing this, so yeah. Moving forwards. I promise I will stop doing that and the start of every new thing. One day, citizens. Give me some time to get comfortable. Right. Men over history, that is, which Monville must not understand. All right. I think I know what this is speaking about, but I have to refresh my memory. Citizens, please join me on page 20, top of it. All right. So, Caesars mentioned Borgia and Napoleon, the latter for being as much inhuman as overmen, and registered aesthetically, which is to say beyond good and evil. Yeah, I think Sharp and Monville is being very uncharitable in their view of what this idea is. So I think it's a bit uncharitable. Moving on. Right, Napoleon tyranny. Really sharp? Really sharp? You're pointing your rifles at Napoleon when he's 150, 200 years dead? Sorry, I'm a bit too tired to be doing this right now. But as I said, it's not technically the official... It is not the official start. It's a technical test. It's a test episode. So, 0.5. So yeah, I find it funny that somebody with an Anglosphere broadly surname is repeating the same Napoleon tyranny, at least in relation to... I will admit that it's at least in relation to Nietzsche's view, so perhaps Sharp is not saying that himself. I can't remember. I promise, citizens, I will read for when Citizen Kathy and I do the actual first episode of this podcast. Monthly Review Mondays. That's what it's going to be called. Okay. Okay, moving forwards. Pro-Nietzsche is behavioral pre-fascism. Yeah, I find this very silly. Pro-Nietzscheism is behavioral pre-fascism. Or I think he might say cultural Nietzscheism is behavioral pre-fascism. I find that stupid. I find that silly. I find that to be, psychoanalyst ad hominem, really. To be honest, to be frank, to be Deutsch, rather, with you, citizens. assuming any of you citizens are watching this, of course, wrong. There is no imminent fascism, right? So, again, we hear on the bottom of page 20 that fascism is imminent. There's authoritarians and fascists around every corner and in every bedsheet. I disagree with Citizen B on this. I disagree with Sharp and Monville on this. I think that says enough. Okay, the right. That would probably get this channel into some sensorial waters, so I'm going to skip that note. This being a political channel, this is going to be almost impossible to do. There's too many rules and too many shady edges of what's permitted and what's not. There's a chapter on... Right, yeah, that's a personal note to myself. There's a chapter on Deloitte and Foucault in this work, apparently. Might be interesting, citizens, to read this, but it does not have an English translation yet, as Sharp laments at the beginning. So we would have to wait, of course. I'm not going to learn the incomprehensibility that is French for a single, I think Sharp said it's like less than 100-page book. So not learning French for that. Apologies. Right. And neither would you citizens anyway, so it's fine. But if it ever does get translated, maybe we read that. Or if that chapter gets leaked, we can read it for a topical discussion. I don't know. Moving on. False. Not leads from Hegel to Marxism. Oh yes, you citizens probably saw this coming if you've read this article. Material dialectic is the opponent of dialectical materialism. Hegelianism is a proto-fascist cancer on the left. Now, I won't hold to that latter part. That is speaking very brashly. But I think Hegelian definitely has strengthened fascism, if only by weakening the left. It has certainly still strengthened fascism in that way, in that regard. So, but that's nothing new. You citizens have heard me say that many times before. I agree with Coletti. Indeed. Coletti is correcti. It's a terrible joke. Why did I say that? Moving on. Okay, coding. Right. Coding is for computers. Not so sharp. Oh, geez. Sharp. Yes, but I hate this opinion euphemism treadmill of, no, it's coding that's ideologically coded. Screw that shite. I find that terminology to be not merely annoying, but stupid. Or stupid and therefore annoying. Moving on. So Foucault and academic canonicity is mentioned. 21b, that is 21 bottom of the page. So academic canonicity is discussed. Moving on. And it's discussed in Liberalism Against Itself by Samuel Moyn, the work we are currently reading. Anyone who's interested, look up Left Margin Reading Club, and the Discord link will be on all of the social medias, basically. Please join us. It's open for everyone. It's completely free. Thursdays, 7 p.m. Central Time. Please join us. Advertising the club. There's so little to even advertise. Okay. Oh, so another reason Camus is an idiot, you mean? Hail Kaiser dear. Yep. Yep, that's a funny. Postmodern managerial classes are pro-Nietzsche? That's odd. I didn't know that. I don't doubt this one. Am not suspicious of this claim as much as I am just curious. I mean, it could be the case. It may be the case. I do not know. So yeah, that's a question. Real socialism is not democratic. Uh-oh. This is going to get into the tussle Citizen B and I have had. Oh no, I didn't think this would come up. Real socialism is not democratic, but aristocratic in its noble virtue, just as the prophet Denin foretold. Joking. It's a jest. Citizen B, of course, if you see this, I know you disagree. I respect your disagreement. I know this is a controversial statement to make in the history of leftism. But, yeah, that's what I think. So, I mean, Blanqui thought it too, right? That's what his whole form of vanguardism was based upon, is the acknowledgement of aristocratic nobility and virtue, and why you need to cultivate those things in a small group. Or perhaps I'm just reading into Blanqui's actual thoughts. I don't know. I've not engaged deeply with him. Okay. So. And we reach the end thought. So, left-Nietzscheanism. Left-Nietzscheism. Negation of the... Oh, that's a personal note that gets into also more controversial, but I haven't spoken about that in club. Of course, you citizens have probably heard me mock the negation of the negation of the negation of the negation. But this is something new, and I'm not going to speak about that until I've developed the thought further. Okay. So it is difficult to ascertain the views of an author from those of the reviewer. So I shall elect to speak of the article. The article as it in self, to avoid the issue. I do not know who the audience was for this work. Outside of Kaufmann, I do not think that I can name anyone approaching a so-called Nietzschean. Yeah, so Kaufmann's the only one who I would say is a Nietzschean. And even he, I'm not sure, would agree to that terminology. Or, not to that terminology, but to that label. I doubt it's just Nietzsche that he looks up to. So, and, has built his framework around. So, who are Nietzscheans? Is there a Nietzscheist party out there? I don't think so. I've never heard of a Nietzscheist party. And don't say the fascist parties that exist are Nietzscheist parties. Considering most of the fascists here have not read Mein Kampf, couldn't be bothered, or even to read the Doctrine of Fascism, which is much, much smaller than Mein Kampf. It's like 200 pages or something? I don't think they would bother reading Nietzsche. They probably don't know anything about Nietzsche. So, I do not think that is a truthful claim. So I'm not sure what I can really accept from this article. There's so much that is not dubious, that's the wrong word, but suspicious, doubtful. That's the word I'm specifically looking for. There is so much that is doubtful of this article that I don't know which claims I can trust, and that are reasonable to consider true just on their own merit. So that's a big problem in this article, and I can confess that some of the difficulty is that I'm not well versed in most of the stuff mentioned here in this article, so of course some of it is my own fault. Apologies, citizens. I'm going to read Nietzsche and Lukács and probably Foucault and Derrida and in Deloitte's someday. Maybe even I'll read Hegel. You citizens know I've read Hegel. Citizen B chose it for his book. It was the second book this club ever read. The Hegel Reader by Stephen Houlgate, and we read a significant chunk of it. I recall. It was about, I think it was perhaps slightly more than half that we read of the Hegel Reader. So we have read Hegel. I have read Hegel. And, yeah. So it was just a joke. It was a silly joke. Are you entertained, citizens? We're at the end here. Is this where I say like, comment, subscribe? You're probably more likely to dislike. Thankfully, Google removed those, so no need to worry about them anymore. If I've done well, please comment. What I could do better, please comment. Remember, this is just a technical... a technical test run of these episodes. The first official episode, Citizen Kathy will be joining me in what is the proper podcast that Monthly Review Mondays is going to be. This is just a test, just a test run, so on. I need to move on. Okay. Where was I? In fact, the danger most prescient towards the left is left Hegelian, left Hegelianism, of which Zizek and Jameson can readily be seen, and which has a much deeper and sinister hold on the left. I sense a bitter grudge being ground by Hegelian academia through the composition of this rebuking of a perceived Nietzschean alternative. Comrade Coletti proved that Hegelianism could be questioned, and if it could be questioned, it could be ridiculed. We are seeing the rise of superior new systems, yet it is still in the state of formulation. Hence the article's desperate attempt to kill it. That is the revolution that the freeing from Hegelian dogma has allowed thought to go through recently. So, yeah, I think that is my conclusion. What am I speaking of? What am I talking about? I think that's my conclusion. That is my conclusion. Officially. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's it, citizens. I suppose I'll take a moment here to not say like, comment, subscribe again, but ask, first of all, are any of you citizens still here? Citizen M, Citizen P, Citizen B, Citizen S? Are any of you watching this? I know Citizen S hasn't accepted the channel invitation yet, which, Citizen S, if somehow you see this without doing that still, you need to accept that to see the contents of this channel, all of the contents of this channel. That needs to be done. Please, citizens, if you're still here, comment down below and give me advice. Give me how you liked this. What can be improved. Right, yeah. All that kind of stuff. And is there anything else that needs to be spoken of? No, I think that's it. Yep. This is the end. This is the conclusion. Stay tuned. Next Monday, Citizen Kathy will be doing this with me. It will be the first official episode of this podcast. This was just like a pre-run test. Again, please don't hold the poorness of this episode against the entire new podcast / series. I don't know. Against my... Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That's what I meant to say. And tell me in the comments if you'd like me to split off this sort of monologue commentary as its own series. Personal commentary style to be interesting enough that I should continue it as its own series. Like, comment, subscribe. Many thanks. I'll see you next Monday.